So welcome to the Life-Centered Introductory Workshop, which is an interactive workshop. This one's particularly for industrial design. By way of introduction, I'm Damien Lutz. I'm the founder of Life-Centered Design Lab, which has been a personal project for about 5 years, basically exploring the fringes of design and what can be done, what more can be done with design to make it more of a force for sustainability and inclusivity and regeneration. And I've written a few books about my research, which have been sort of like speculative frameworks to bring in life-centered design and non-human personas and speculative design as well, which helps think about the future. Just check you can see my screen. Everyone can see my screen? Cool.
Yeah.
You. So what we'll do tonight is we're going to be using this new tool I've created, which is like an online workshop tool to introduce people to life-centered design. I'll give you a little introduction, high level about what life-centered design is, just so we can spend more time on playing around with these cards. And I'll talk about what those three pillars are, those three categories are. And then we'll actually talk about workflow. We'll use one of these workflow diagrams and have a discussion about how do we get some of these strategies into your workflow, because that's where it becomes really practical. And it's also, I think, where the most challenges are, getting life-centered design into everyday use. Can I just check everyone can get into the Miro board? Just put the link there. Just make sure you can get in. If you haven't set up an account, you can do one really quickly for free. And I'll just put the link there. Can I just get a thumbs up if everyone can get into the Miro board? Directly, can you get in it?
Yes,
Okay,
it's
great.
okay for me.
Excellent. So the subject for the workshop tonight will be the IKEA's Poang chair. This is something we actually did. I worked with a group of other designers, the Life-Centered Design Collective, and we did tested some tools, life-centered design tools on redesigning this chair. So that'll be our subject, and the cards that we'll play with will get us innovating all these different levels in the user journey, with the design team and business level, and perhaps at the industry level, and then we'll think about how we can connect these to the sustainable development goals. But let me just start by talking a little bit about what life-centered design is. And it's basically an emerging design approach that's expanding human-centered design, from just focusing on the needs of our target users and the business profits to also design for the needs of all life and all the life that we impact. And this is a very rudimentary categorization that I've created to help us think about that. So it's all people, and that's so the target users, also people along our supply chain that are impacted, factory workers, but also the communities that might be impacted by the factories that create our goods. It's all the animals in those environments as well. And that's from animals of all sizes, insects, microbes that are under the ground that we don't see, all the animals as well that's impacted. And then finally, also all the environments and environmentals. This could be things like trees and plants, but also water systems and wetlands, and also things like air and sunlight. So just bringing everything in together, that's life, and some things that we don't even consider alive, like say a mountain or rocks. But just being aware that all these things are present and that we may impact them. So ultimately, it's about thinking about kind of what you were saying, David, before, is it's everything that we create has its own ecosystem. We take an ecosystem view of these things. Oracle, let me see. Can you, so you can't see the board directly?
Yeah, it asked me to send a permission to be able to view it, which I already did. I don't know if you have received anything like request access from me.
Let me just have a look. So that link should allow anyone to get in there. So I'll just paste it again in the chat. Otherwise, if that doesn't work, drop in an email in the chat and I'll invite you directly. So have a look at that in the back.
Yes, I'll send my email then.
Okay. But yeah, so it's about taking an ecosystem view of all the projects that we do. So here's, the people that we design for in the middle here, but it's also this life cycle that expands all the way across It can reach across lands, it can reach across cultures, and it's recognizing this impacts all these different life forms in those spaces as well. But it's also thinking about time. We're part of these industries, they're part of our ecosystem as well. And because we benefit from these industries, we're also contributing to the negative impacts. So it's thinking about when we design something and the industry are part of that, we're not perpetuating any past damage, we're healing it as well. But we're also thinking about the future people and future life forms. It's also, how do we get rid of all that stuff? Let me just clear that. There we go. And it's also about recognizing the wider planetary issues and goals that our projects and our industries connect to, so that we can use our business design and even in our product design to support um, these goals and these issues. So at the top there is the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm sure you've heard of those, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So lifestyle design helps us think about, well, which ones are we impacting and contributing to? And if a business uses some life-centered thinking and has ESG commitments like environmental, social, and governance commitments, then the designer at the product level can connect with those and by proxy connect with the sustainable development goals that they impact and have a more positive impact, do less harm and do more good. So ultimately it's to do less harm and do more good and turn our ecosystems into these positive, healthy parts of the greater planetary ecosystem, so that everything that we take from them less, and if we're still taking from life on the planet, we regenerate them. And we stay aware of these greater planetary issues we're contributing to and do our best to reduce that impact and turn our impacts into more positive. Some examples, you may have heard of these, Patagonia, which is a retail, outdoor retail company in America. They've created a manifesto about becoming anti-racist. So this is about thinking about all people. They support fair work conditions all across their life cycle. They utilize material sourcing programs that support people, animals, and soil health. They've created wornwear at the other end of the life cycle, so people can actually bring back their Patagonia clothes and resell them, so extending their life, their reuse. They used to pledge 1% of sales to environmental issues, but now the founder is pledging 100% of sales. So he's gone full on with this sort of life-centered approach. He actually made an interesting comment that he's not sure any sort of business that's as big as Patagonia could ever really be life-centered and not do a great deal of damage. So this is where we really need to get it in practice and explore how we can perhaps change that. Another example is Fairphone, which create modular phones, modular mobile phones. So you can just replace, instead of getting a whole new iPhone because the new cameras come out, just replace the camera. You can replace the batteries yourself. So it's really reducing a lot of waste, but they also advocate for better working conditions across the life cycle. And they practice transparency by sharing all of their reporting, etc. Another one is Field Better, which is more from like the global south, and they utilize food waste, well, food that ends up as waste, but that's still worth using. And they share that with local farmers, women, youth, and refugees, people that couldn't get an income otherwise. And they can use that food, they create other sorts of food like jams, etc., and create a business and an income. So this is a way of sort of how life-centered thinks much broader than just selling a phone to millions of people and making a lot of money out of that. So how do we become life-centered? So through my research, which was exploring over 20 different design practices and disciplines and approaches, and I'm synthesizing that insight and their principles, this emerged, which is 3 design pillars. So if we uphold these 3 design pillars in every project, we then protect all life. And these actually align directly with the ESGs, the environmental, social, and governance commitments. So it's sustainable and regenerative. They're kind of dual pillars, each one of them. And that's a way of making us think in more systems. So for example, sustainable and regenerative, that's about designing sustainably. We're using sustainable materials and being circular, but we also then regenerative and we give back more. Inclusive and pluriversal, this is our social aspect. So designing inclusively for accessibility, diversity, but then thinking more broadly about the different cultures that we may impact, our life cycles may impact, and stopping that impact. And then responsible and aligned, designing responsibly, ethically, not using dark patterns, but then having the organization aligned, as I said, with broader planetary goals. So if we aim to uphold these pillars in every project, we then can transform projects to become more life-centered and respect the needs of all life, all the peoples, all the animals, and the environments. Before I go into the interactive space, just want to pause there, see if there's any sort of thoughts or questions. It's okay or not, you're maybe just absorbing it all. So what we are going to do now is we're going to play with some of these cards. And so they're all sorted into the three different pillars, and we'll get a few of each. I'll give you perhaps one of each, three cards each. So for example, in sustainable and regenerative, one strategy is how might your product or systems be inspired by nature's sustainable designs? So Nancy, you'd be familiar with this. This is biomimicry. So there's an example there, and there's a QR code where you can scan it and learn a little bit more about that, and then come up with some innovation ideas. Inclusive and pluriversal. How might your product design or business support gender equality? Again, there's an example and a QR code. And if we're being responsible and aligned as well, how might your product and business support one of the sustainable development goals? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screenshot that. And I'm going to drop those three in here. While I grab your cards, and Heracles, I'll sort out your access. If you can drop in your names on one of these stickies while I get you organized. So yeah, if you can go in there and drop your name in any of these, and then I'll get you some cards to design with. Oh, so can you edit as well, Heracles? Can you get in there and edit one of these?
Yes, sure. I just said in my name.
Awesome, fantastic. And once you've got some cards here, David, I'll give you these. Have a read through them. And what you'll do is, actually, I'll split them up for you. Might be easier. Maybe I'll just give you one each to start with. I think that might be a little bit easier. Let's do that. Okay, so when you read your card, have a think about what level are you going to be, does it relate to? So for example, Nancy, yours is how might your product or systems be inspired by nature's sustainable designs? You could do that at the product level and the user journey, or at the business level. David, yours could be, how might your product design support gender equality? So that's obviously going to be down here. And Heracles, yours is about sustainable development goals. How do you connect the business to that? So it's thinking about which ones you're related to. So put that down here. And this is yours there. So what I'll do, I'll set the timer and let you just have a read through, and then think about where along in this journey and user journey could you support this strategy for yourself. Heracles, how could you perhaps do this at either of these levels, at the design and business, or let's put it at the design and business level. So it's about thinking about what sustainable development goal. The project, as I said,
So
yeah.
for me, it was a good health, I believe, good health and well-being. So that probably definitely relates to ecosystem level, planetary health.
Well, if we think about this is the subject, which is the chair. So we're designing this chair. This is the design subject. So it uses wood and materials. So perhaps it's related to sustainable, responsible consumption and production. Perhaps life on land as well, because it's using.
Yeah.
We'll have to think about
Also
that.
probably business partners
Mhm.
and industry sourcing.
Yeah. So have a look at some of those.
Geographical, probably.
and then have a read of the example how the business could possibly support those using its resources. So I'm going to set the timer. Is everyone clear what they're going to do? Nancy?
No, I'm sorry. I'm still not clear what I'm doing.
Okay, so your card is how might your product assistance be inspired by nature's sustainable designs? So that's
Yes,
something that you would do pretty much at the design level. Yep.
yes, yes,
So you could think about perhaps the customers use where or in the design of it in production, like how would you apply mimicry into it? And if you look at the example there, okay, so whale power used biomimicry to design turbine blades based on the fin of a whale. So
yes.
how could you perhaps use biomimicry to design to inspire the design of the chair? So have a read through, scan the QR code, and have a think about how you could bring that in. Or maybe you want to bring biomimicry into the business design.
Well, I've got it down here under design team and business. But you're also asking me to put it into one of the areas of the user journey?
Yeah, or this of the life. I guess they should probably really call that life cycle.
Okay,
Let's call that life cycle. That might make it a bit clearer.
okay,
Where, yeah, at what stage would you bring biomimicry into the life cycle stage?
okay, okay.
David, do you feel comfortable with your card to brainstorm some ideas?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Just have a read through the cards, look at the example, scan the QR code, and just start dropping in some ideas. I'm going to just give us maybe 6 minutes just to play around, put on some music. Maybe chill beat, calm flow is pretty good. Think about too about your card, if you can relate it to a sustainable development goal and how the organization could support that goal. Someone here, how might your product or business heal past social and environmental damage done by your industry? Well, they could regenerate forest by supporting conservation initiatives. They could then bring it into the product design by enabling customers to contribute to forest regeneration as well, like that info on a QR code where they can donate. They could form an alliance with supply chain partners to do the same thing. And this is kind of related to life on land. So they could support other life on land initiatives. How did you go? Who wants to share back some of their ideas? David, do you want to share your thoughts with us?
Yeah, sure. So as I actually I first had some initial ideas, but then I started having some trouble. But in terms of like sitting, so the Poang armchair, um, I had ideas related with gender neutral aesthetics. To avoid like the marketing of pink, that separation of pink, blue, and all of that kind of thing. So having also a gender neutral marketing representation of the products, avoiding using only male or female actors. So always kind of like a mixing and having the ergonomic considerations for a broad type of body types and ergonomic considerations for pregnant or even postpartum type of yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so and I also thought about creating awareness through like I don't know by having some sort of QR code too. We could I was trying to think of some way of bringing awareness to like gender neutrality, at least in terms of ergonomic considerations for furniture. Yeah.
Cool.
Um,
Like have it on the packaging or
yeah.
on the
Yeah.
chair itself, even. Yeah, nice. Nice way of bringing it into the ergonomics. That was really nice. Nancy, how did you go?
I had biomimicry. I think biomimicry can be used across every stage here. So I didn't get finished. I only got maybe the first 4 or 5 done. But for example, in the extraction stage, we could learn how nature extracts resources. For my I can say animals take resources off the surface of the earth. I don't know about any animals that dig deep into the crust of the earth, but certainly we could look into that and see how they do it and what's sustainable, because nature has to decide and define what is sustainable, not us. And then materials processing, certainly renewable energy is the first obvious choice, but there should be other bio-based approaches that we can learn from nature about how animals and insects and the different aspects of nature process materials. The same for producing materials. Again, we know renewable energy, but there should be lots of other examples of how things are produced um, in nature, the organization system that bees use and ants use and things like this, and efficient layouts for floor designs in your factory.
Nice.
We could, in the product packaging, I know this is a topic that many of my students have worked on, and they've looked at the design of honeycombs and all sorts of different designs, clamshells, things that can be hard and sturdy, but they're natural based materials, things that can be flexible, things that are always biodegradable because they've come from nature. Shipping and storage is, I think, similar to production in that we can look in how nature transports materials, but also I'm thinking about refrigerated containers. There are ways that we can do those with natural materials to maintain the temperature in products, not for the chair, but for other products. So there are lots of examples that we can learn from nature of how to ship and transport materials and products. And that's as far as I got. And I think all of these would relate to all of this, many of the sustainable development goals, such as production and responsible production and consumption, #1, but also clean water and air, life below land and life in the water. I think all of these would relate to many of the sustainable development goals.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah, so basically what you're looking at biomimicry, all the different levels, looking at systems in nature and apply them to,
Yes,
and as you said, like for shipping. And I love how you talked about the floor layout, just seeing how
yes.
beehives and natural systems work.
Hmm.
Beautiful. Thank you. Irakli, how did you go?
So my focus was on promoting the health and hygiene for the users, and how could we make certain decisions on design level to promote these principles. And I had a couple of ideas about it. On a material extraction level, probably as a design team, it would be a good idea if you take care of the origin of the materials and how trustworthy are the sustainability claims about those materials. For example, to go for certified wood only, and also to pay attention to the type of binders and glues that are also used in making those products, because very often petrochemical based binders are pretty bad for your health, and so most probably you take care of that. Also, sometimes, as we see from our practice, it looks very innocent to use some materials when you get them in a finished form, but to make them or to source them is sometimes problematic. For example, tanning the leather with chemicals. So I would probably also take care of that part if downstream the impact has been made in a bad way by those materials, and I would somehow try to eliminate them. And for example, go for innovative materials like mycelium leather, for example, or plant-based leather. Then in parts production, yeah, I think for furniture, what is relevant sometimes some shiny materials like chromium, for example, has a terrible environmental footprint, and I would try to build my design around about innocent, I would say, features, not on some kind of ostentation and shiny chromium or gold, that kind of details, which attract attention, but to create some kind of honest design with yeah, fair materials. Then in packaging and shipping, I think it's important to have the possibility for flat pack shipping, because the supply chains are very global and most of the time companies are just transporting air around, and that could have two effects. One, to minimize the impact of transportation, and also I think it will somehow make the handling also easier by workers. If some people have to do it every day during a long period of time, sometimes just because of handling, they have some back problems. And I think it's also a good idea to think about the people who are actually installing them and how could you make it easier or to minimize that impact. During the use phase, probably if you integrate here some kind of proactive health maintenance approach, that this is not just for sitting, but if you sit on this type of chair, it also helps you proactively to take care of your back health, for example. If you could integrate that by shape and form of the design to be more ergonomic and to take care of the health. For the refurbishing and recycling, yeah, here probably to have some kind of design for disassembly approach, because if you facilitate disassembly at the end of life, I think indirectly you are also taking care of people's health, because otherwise it would go for incineration and landfill, and you are kind of trying to avoid those emissions in an indirect way, and for the society's health and hygiene, that could work, I think, positively. And then when it comes to waste and landfill, yeah, everything has a limited period of time, but we've been just discussing it in the office, that some iconic design chairs, they are like more than 100 years old, created by famous designers, but they still mesmerize people. The desire to keep something and for how long, that's also something very important. So if you could integrate some kind of iconic design feature so that people actually don't want to depart with these items, probably that's would be also an interesting strategy to prolong the lifetime and to avoid the fact that they go to landfill.
Right, it's awesome that you thought all the way through there. You're thinking about other people outside of the users, such as the supply chain workers. What made you choose health and well-being as a theme?
Well, I think that's an important side factor, which in lots of cases stays beyond the site, and our ability to see the things is not always within the time frame that we are dealing with. Sometimes the feedback that the user gets from certain action might come in 50 years. So I think we as designers and design offices have the responsibility to make this more transparent and understandable for the users. What are the effects of the actions that that they take, to make it somehow more understandable and clear what will happen after 50 years, to make it yeah, to expose kind of these kind of results from the beginning of the design.
Well, I guess there's different levels of health and well-being, isn't there? It's like a chair needs to be ergonomic for well-being.
Mhm.
But then, as you're saying, the treatment of the whole life cycle is going to contribute to the long-term well-being of all of us.
Mhm.
So I thought it's interesting. I'm just curious how you came about that, but I think it applies really, really well. So you can see how that lifestyle design is getting you to think beyond just the product design, by utilizing the business as well, business strategies to connect to sort of global issues, to think longer term, as you did, Irakli,
Mhm.
even just beyond the sort of life cycle of the product, but also longer term. What are the longer term planetary impacts? This is what life-centered design does. It makes us zoom in and out from the product design to the life cycle, to the business, to the planet, and then back in. So we can keeping aware of our direct and indirect impacts of this one little thing that we're creating and selling hundreds of thousands of, to benefit just a certain target people and the business. So thank you for bringing sort of those ideas to that. I wanted to now just go to the next step where we think about how would you bring these in to your workflow. So I'm going to use this kind of rudimentary flow of a product design process. And Nancy, you've kind of already talked to it a lot with the biomimicry, but I'll bring these cards down and maybe have a think about how all of these, at what stage, all these cards, what stages would you bring them into the design process? So have a look at them, drag them across, drop in some sticky notes. There's some sticky notes there, and just think about how would you integrate these strategies into your workflow of the product design process. Is that all right? Looks like we've got some ideas there. I can go first just to sort of kick it off. So I was looking at how might the product or business heal the past damage done by the industry. So it's at the research stage, understanding the past impact of life forms. And then in the design stage, using that research. So just be aware of the design, how it might impact those life forms and not doing that anymore. So if we were perhaps using a material that's not sustainable, just ensuring that we pivot from that. Also testing the results on those impacted life forms just once it's designed and developed. And that's the same with the sustainable development goals, just understanding their past impacts, setting some metrics, and checking those impacts when we test. And then afterwards, once it's launched, just monitor the impacts as well with those metrics. How did you go, Irakli? What did you come up with? So how did you get into your workflow?
Yeah, I had one interesting card here. If it's logical or possible that the global network of businesses, artisans, and fab labs can help you to reduce your supply chain. I think in this light, it's interesting to connect this with the idea of or the possibility of designing with reused materials, or the aesthetics of designing with what is or what we would like to have. So if you could have a network of artisans who are working on this assembly of furniture, and then they are cleaning it for you or whatever, being in contact with them, I think will enable you to design new pieces of furniture with almost zero footprint, because there is no need to produce again these materials. Everything is locked in with the previous production. So I think that enables a very creative and new type of supply chain, through people to source materials from nearby places which are repaired, and to create some unique design furniture pieces out of it, which follows the logics of what is available, not what we would like to have.
And it's like distributed design. You could distribute the manufacturing. So instead of having one manufacturing warehouse or factory in one country, if you can share your design digitally to these local makers and fab labs, they can produce it for you completely cutting out the supply chain. So then you don't even really have that supply chain, which is sort of another approach as well. Did you do another one here as well? Or was that?
Yes, one was about gender balance and actual manufacturing stage. I think there is a chance to give a good chance to the people who are actually assembling them. We, as a company, when we need to prototype, we very often work with a kind of a social enterprise here in Belgium, which is giving job to the people, as we call, they have certain distance to the normal employment market because they might be coming from a migrant background or they would have some kind of health problems lately in their life. So there's a special place actually where all these kind of people get projects for employment. And I think via these type of social enterprises, there's a very good chance to give fair chance, both to women and men, to actually participate in making it. Because I think there will be still certain stigmas, like what is more manly job or what is more a female job. Upholstery should be, let's say, done by ladies more. I don't know if there are any stereotypes there,
Yeah,
but I
sure.
think by giving fair work to people via these kind of innovative projects, I think it will have a chance to make a difference.
Yeah, nice. Good thinking. I like that. How did you go, Nancy?
Yes, I only have a few things that I put on here. First, in the understand stage or step, I wonder when we interview the customer and we try to do our market research, if the customer can even articulate the life cycle impacts of the product. Perhaps they've never thought of this, but I think to get this in their mind immediately, first step helps them to understand maybe some of the choices and design decisions we make later on in future steps. So I think it's important to discuss this right up front with the customers. Then as we move on to define, I put down that we should identify which SDGs are aligned with the customer's desired product. Um, and then for conceptualize, that our ideas should be restorative for not just environmental systems, but also human systems. When we talk about supply chains and sweatshops and child labor and slave labor and forced overtime and all of these issues, which again goes back to the first step, is the customer even aware of these impacts? And that's as far as I got, just the first three steps.
I think it's if we can take customers along, make them aware of the life cycle, as you say, engage them at different stages of it somehow with feedback mechanisms. Again, QR codes, letting them know, hey, this chair came from this forest. You're now in a relationship with that forest now because you're using these materials. Do you want to donate to them? Get
Yes.
on that personal level and really strengthening the idea that there's a relationship between the organization, the designer, and the people using these things from the planet. I think
Yes.
to really strengthen that, that can start to drive it home to people. David, how did you go?
Yeah, so I saw that the testing and the prototyping were kind of empty, so I started there
Nice. Yeah.
with a gender neutral, with a gender inequality part, the card. Um, and I considered again the ergonomic part, the ergonomic perspective from the users in the testing phase, and then with the reviewing, we would consider we would create the iterations based on users' feedback directly. Yeah. And then I also had with the market research to discuss and understand the different needs that might come from the different genders instead of assuming
Yes.
just that. Um, and yeah, I think Irakli also concluded it very well with the consideration for the fair gender paying
Yeah.
and the enterprise level gender balance. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So let me just ask you, how did you find that? Was that what you were expecting tonight? How did you find that broad thinking in terms of beyond the product design itself? What's your thoughts on that?
Um, I think personally, I'm a bit lucky in a sense that my team is already thinking in this way. So I had a chance to interact with some of the projects where we already do similar thinking.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like it with some of the thoughts you brought in. And Nancy, how did you find it? Was it what you were expecting tonight? Or did you thought it'd be more product focused? Or yeah, how do you find this
No,
in and out?
I think this is fabulous, and I want to share this with my students.
Oh, lovely. David, how'd you go?
Yeah, for me, it's what I kind of expected, but it's not what I'm used to. Yeah, I'm more used to the more focus for the more product focused
Yeah.
approach. So yeah, it's cool.
And so there's like that can be overwhelming. I know, I understand sort of just coming into this tonight, but there is strategies to apply all this thinking at the right time. I've been teaching it in a course, which is it's just I call it the foundations course, and the approach is about doing less harm and doing more good. So, and it's a method for redesigning existing products. So there's lots of different things that we can do, right? We could design for the needs of real world problems, but I think that at the same time, I think we need dual streams. We need to design to solve real world problems, but we also need to fix things that are creating damage right now, which are products that just keep getting made. And so if we can redesign them to do less harm and more good, um, then there's less for us to fix longer term. So this approach is about doing less harm first of all. So applying circular design, um, mapping your ecosystem to understand the impacts, and then doing less harm. So applying circular, sustainable, and inclusive design so that we take less from the planet, we take less from people, we impact them negatively less. Um, so we really minimize what we're taking and what we're negatively impacting. And that sets us up to then move into a more regenerative mode, which is where we do more good. And that's where we recognize, okay, we're still taking from these life forms. So we've got to give them a voice, and we can do that with non-human personas. And then we recognize that we can regenerate them. And that's how we do more good. And then ultimately, on a planetary level, connect to sustainable development goals as well. And then also giving the future a voice. Again, we can give future people a persona and think about their needs. So this is a kind of a structure that brings all that together and kind of step by step. So minimizing what you take and your impact to start with, and then you can move into regenerative mode. I hope that's given you a little bit of insight and inspiration. Feel free to go to my website and log into the Academy. It's free to join. There are all these different resources. There's videos to watch. Uh, there's tools to use as well. There's projects. There's a non-human persona library. Nancy, I don't know if you've seen that, but I've just been collecting all the personas that we create in my courses and personas that other people create. As an example, this is one that was made by a student for the hummingbird. He was addressing these hummingbird feeders that people make, but they're made of plastic. They're full of sugar. The birds get addicted to them. But they give comfort to people, particularly elderly. In this gentleman, where he worked in an elderly home, and so he's sort of trying to look at how can that still have some purpose, but redesign in a much more eco-friendly way, but also that relationship. And his ideas were kind of shifting the elderly's relationship to be more of a caretaker than just using the hummingbird for like a pet, etc. But by understanding all that and by doing a persona, it helped him sort of innovate those ideas. The other really cool thing about personas is that you can create videos. These are like very engaging. These are really great when you're trying to get buy-in and share them with your customers or share them with your clients or the public. I urge you to go and have a look at some of these. Some are made by students, others are made by other companies as well. But it's really interesting. It's a way to give nature and those invisible people, those communities that are impacted, give them a voice all the way through that process. And there's a whole bunch of tools in there that you can access to sort of play around with and just start getting this what I challenge you is just to find one thing in my site, one tool, and try to get it in as BAU into your workflow, just as a starting point. Try it out for a month, see if you can get it in as a starting point. So with that, that's pretty much the workshop. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you find these cards useful, I'm going to just still do some testing with this, and then I'll launch them soon. But yeah, if any other thoughts or that you want to share or questions you have.
Yes, I would like to ask one question. When you talk about regeneration and doing less harm and giving back more to the nature than you have originally taken, I assume we don't only mean enabling this by product design, right?
That's
That
right.
might be some other operational changes in the organization. For example, if you make a chair, I would love to, at the end of life, it to be giving back more to the nature than I have taken. But you also have to make it, you have to transport it. There are certain pragmatic things which you cannot just skip.
Mhm.
So does that mean that for offsetting that, you change your certain operations? For example, you invest in forest regeneration somewhere or land regeneration. How do you see this practical link of
Exactly.
giving back more to the nature than you have taken it?
So the do more good, which is regenerating, is very much, it's more, you have more power to do that at the organizational level, because it is about, that's more, where the power is to change, because you're sharing your profit. You're not going to, you have to give back more. You can't keep as much energy and money, etc.
Mm,
That's a difficult thing for some people to hear and some business organizations to hear, but that's what we need to do. But if they can, connect it to the things and they can see what they're impacting, it makes more sense to give back and regenerate, because that also makes the company and organization more resilient, because you're regenerating the sources that make their
mm,
product, they use for their products. So it is very much sort of strategies that are applied more at this business level. But then it's also about how can you then bring those initiatives and support them with the product. I think you've all kind of come up with ideas, like David was saying, add a QR code to help people think about, gender equality and that sort of thing. So how can you come up with these ideas at the business level, then how do you bring it down to the product level and use the product's
mm,
design to support it as well? And another aspect is uh, people's behaviors. So whether it's how they use your product, so enabling them to keep it, maintain it, repair it, enabling them to dispose of it sustainably and carefully, but then also sharing this sort of knowledge with citizens, making it
mm,
more of a cause. And that's where you can use these sort of video non-human personas to connect with a broader audience, connect emotionally, and say, hey, we are still impacting these parts, these life forms. We need to give back to them. Let's be a part of it. But yes, so do more good is more at that sort of business level, but then you try to bring it back down to support it with the product as well. So
mm.
this is the thing about lifestyle design, is that you constantly zoom in and out to stay aware of your whole ecosystem and the impacts that, like you've heard of circular rebound effects. You can have them up across these levels as well. So it's about zooming in and out and getting comfortable with that as well.
No, thank you for that explanation.
You're
No, it
welcome.
makes more sense.
Awesome. Awesome.